Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here today because, well, we are going to unpack a brilliant piece of psychological text that honestly is probably going to hit pretty close to home for a lot of us. We're doing a deep dive into the specific language used to describe a really challenging interpersonal dynamic. We're going to pull apart these few crucial sentences piece by piece to decode the chaos. So settle in and get ready because we are going to look closely at the exact mechanics of erratic behavior.
To kick things right off, what actually defines unpredictable behavior? It's a phrase we throw around all the time. We say the weather is unpredictable or traffic is totally unpredictable. But when it comes to the actual people in our lives, what does that really mean? How do we distinguish between someone who is maybe just a little spontaneous and someone whose behavior is actively keeping us off balance? Well, today we are going to unpack these specific warning signs, the real red flags that define this difficult dynamic.
All right, part one. The pattern of unpredictability. Before we look at the exact words from our source material, let's just make sure we get our working definition absolutely nailed down. Unpredictability, in this specific context, is a behavioral pattern characterized by erratic actions and sudden shifts that keep others constantly off balance. This definition is going to be our main lens for today's explainer. When we're talking about red flags here, we are talking about a mechanism that inherently creates instability for literally whoever is on the receiving end. Now, our source points out that, quote, you might see this unpredictability in, and I want you to notice the framing here. We are about to look at the tangible, visible evidence of this behavior. We're moving from the sort of abstract concept of being unpredictable right down into the daily lived experience. Moving right along to Section 2, Actions versus Promises. The very first major symptom listed is, quote, sudden changes of plans. Now, what's really fascinating here is that word sudden, because, look, everyone has to change plans sometimes, right? Life happens to all of us. But this text specifically highlights sudden changes. It's the jarring, completely immediate nature of the disruption that marks it as a symptom of a much larger pattern. It's that sinking realization that the schedule you thought was totally secure is actually just built on shifting sand. Which bleeds right into the next fragment, inconsistent promises. So the absolute crucial point here is the massive gap between what is said and what is actually done. A promise is meant to create a predictable future, right? It's basically a verbal contract. But when promises are constantly inconsistent, that verbal contract becomes completely meaningless. The words point in one direction while the actual actions go somewhere else entirely. And that creates a deeply confusing, disorienting environment for anyone trying to navigate a relationship with this person. All right, Section 3, Traumatic Emotional Shifts. Or dramatic shifts in their mood or how they treat you. Let's actually slow down for a second and really look at that word dramatic. We aren't just talking about someone waking up a little grumpy or having a stressful afternoon. It's highlighting dramatic shifts, true emotional whiplash. One moment the baseline is perfectly fine, and the next, bam, there is a severe, completely unexplainable change in the emotional weather. And this brings us to a brilliant illustration of the second half of that quote, how they treat you. See, it's not just an internal mood, it's an external treatment of you. In real-life practice, this looks like incredibly warm and engaged treatment on one hand, completely contrasted by cold, distant, almost freezing treatment on the other. When these two extremes just bounce back and forth dramatically and without any warning, the unpredictability becomes highly personalized. It directly impacts your own sense of standing and security with that individual. Okay, let's take a breath and synthesize what we've unpacked from that single, powerful phrase so far. The symptoms of unpredictability are crystal clear. You've got sudden changes of plans, you've got inconsistent promises, dramatic mood shifts, and dramatic shifts in treatment. Seeing them all listed out together like this really highlights the comprehensive nature of the chaos, doesn't it? It attacks your logistics, your trust in their word, and your emotional stability all at the exact same time. So it begs a really vital question. Why? Why does this unpredictability actually persist? If these behaviors are so obviously disruptive, what is the underlying engine that keeps this cycle spinning instead of, just resolving it? Well, the source has a very specific structural answer to this question. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the accountability deficit. And here is the big reveal from the text. The lack of accountability. Our source directly links all those erratic behaviors we just talked about to this one single concept. It suggests that unpredictability isn't just some quirky personality trait. No, it is actively sustained by an environment where the person does not have to answer for the chaos they create.
Let's formally define what we're looking at here. A lack of accountability is essentially the underlying mechanic where an individual simply refuses to answer for the consequences of their erratic actions. Think about it. If you make a sudden change of plans, but you are accountable, you apologize, right? You explain what happened, you try to fix it. But when that accountability is completely absent, there's absolutely no friction to stop the unpredictable behavior. The chaos is basically given a free pass to just run wild.
And that leads us to the final, honestly devastating phrase from our source. Often means they'll deny responsibility. It perfectly captures the totally unresolved, ongoing nature of this dynamic. The ultimate outcome of this behavioral pattern isn't closure. It isn't a sincere apology. It is a direct, flat-out denial of responsibility. And because they deny their role in the sudden changes or those dramatic moods, well, the cycle is completely free to just start all over again tomorrow.
Which leaves us with this final, really vital question for you to ponder. How do you handle unaccountable people in your own life? We've fully decoded the pattern today, from the sudden logistical changes to the dramatic emotional shifts, all of it fueled by a total denial of responsibility. The blueprints for identifying these exact red flags are right in front of you now. So, now that you can clearly see the mechanics of unpredictability for what they are, how are you going to use this understanding to protect your own boundaries? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Explainer. Keep observing, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.